Hello, welcome to Easy Learn 360. Today's topic is homeostasis. In this video, the subtopics we are going to discuss are definition of homeostasis, components of feedback system. Before going to the definition and all, I would like to just clarify the concept of homeostasis. In this figure, you can see a rod which is being balanced on the tip of a triangle. This is in the state of balance. Now, when weight or pressure is applied to one side, the rod will have a tendency to topple down. So what we have to do in order to avoid this, we will have to give a counter pressure or a counter force so that the rod will come back to its steady or balanced state. So this is what exactly is happening to human body also. We are maintaining the balance of different parameters in the internal environment of our body. Whenever there is a stimulus can be either internal or external. Whenever there is a stimulus and that stimulus can affect the internal parameters in such a way that is incompatible to life or which is life threatening, then what will happen? The regulatory process in our body will come into play. The regulatory process will strive to maintain that parameters within the normal range and keep the system into a balance. This process is called homeostasis. Another example for is that suppose we are in a temperature of 0 degrees Celsius without any winter gear. Our body temperature has to be at a range of 36.1 to 37.1 degrees Celsius because all the activities, enzymes, proteins, chemical reactions all takes place in this optimum temperature. So when suddenly we are in a temperature below 0 degrees Celsius, our body compensatory mechanism will start and the regulatory system, the brain will initiate orders to different systems and organs so that the body can preserve the heat to 37 degrees Celsius and the life will not be threatened. Okay, so what will happen? The body will start to shiver. The muscles are getting ordered to get so that the skin, hairs of the skin will become erect and we will feel the goosebumps. These all things are done to preserve the heat, and also the kidneys will get the order to preserve water, and also the gastrointestinal system will get their order to delay the digestion process. So all these things are done to preserve heat or preserve energy for the life sustaining activities. So these are the regulatory mechanisms. So this is called homeostasis. Often students have confusion with the students get confused with another word, that is hemostasis. Hemostasis means something related to blood, blood and its components. So we are going to the definition. Homeostasis. Homeo means sameness. Stasis means standing still. The maintenance of relatively stable conditions in the body's internal environment is known as homeostasis. Homeostasis is a dynamic, steady state. So why we say that it is a dynamic as well as a steady state? Dynamic means all the parameters are regulated. That is, they have a fixed range which is compatible to life. For example, the blood glucose or blood sugar level, they are maintained within the range of 70 to 100, 110 or 120 milligram per deciliter. Either we are taking food at intervals or we have taken a high carbohydrate rich food, the blood sugar level will be 70 to 120 milligram per deciliter in a normal person. So this is done by the regulated by the endocrine system. So many systems will play into this maintenance of homeostasis. So we can say that it is the interplay of many regulatory processes. That is what the word dynamic means in homeostasis. Then what do you mean by steady state? So in this figure, you have seen that the rod is maintained in a steady state. Like that, in order to maintain the parameters in a steady state, energy is required. So energy is required to keep the regulated parameter at a constant level. So we are maintaining the blood sugar level or the temperature or the pH of the blood within the normal level with the expenditure of energy. Steady state is not same as equilibrium. In an equilibrium, conditions remain constant without the expenditure of energy. So each structure in the body, from the cellular level to the systemic level, contributes in some way to keeping the internal environment of the body within the normal levels. An important aspect of homeostasis is maintaining the volume and composition of body fluids inside our body. In a normal adult, 50 to 60% of total body mass consists of body fluids. And body fluids consist of intracellular fluid and extracellular fluid. Intracellular fluid means fluid inside the cells. In this figure, we can see these are the body cells, and the fluid inside the body cells are called intracellular fluid, and fluid outside the cells are extracellular fluid. Majority is ICF. So 2/3 of body fluids are intracellular and the remaining 1/3 is extracellular fluid. Now extracellular fluid is again divided into interstitial fluid and plasma. Interstitial fluid, 80% of extracellular fluid are interstitial fluid. Interstitial fluid means fluid filled in narrow spaces between the cells, that is here. In narrow spaces between the cells, the fluid which is occupying the narrow spaces between the cells are interstitial fluid. 80% of extracellular fluid are interstitial fluid. And the rest 20% are plasma. Plasma means the fluid portion of blood. Now since the fluid which is outside of the cells are extracellular, extracellular fluid is considered as the body's internal environment. The extracellular fluid serves as the body's internal environment. So whenever we say that the body's internal environment is changed, the parameters in the internal environment means extracellular fluid. A number of body systems allow exchange of substances between the external, internal environment and body cells to maintain homeostasis. For example, in the integumentary system covers the outer surface of the body. Although this system does not play a major role in the exchange of materials, it protects the internal environment from damaging agents in the external environment. And from the external environment, oxygen enters plasma through the respiratory system and nutrients enter plasma through the digestive system. After entering plasma, these substances are transported through the body by cardiovascular system. And this oxygen and nutrients leave plasma and then enter interstitial fluid by crossing the blood capillaries. Then from interstitial fluid, these oxygen and nutrients are taken up by the cells for metabolization. Okay, so the nutrients, oxygen and nutrients, they enter via respiratory system and digestive system. From the plasma, they are moving into the interstitial fluid. From the interstitial fluid, they are entering inside the cell for metabolization. And during this process, the cell produce waste products, which again enter the interstitial fluid and then move across the blood capillary into the plasma, and this process continues. So the cardiovascular system transports these waste to the appropriate organs for elimination from the body into the external environment. The waste product carbon dioxide is removed from the body by respiratory system. Nitrogen containing waste such as urea and ammonia are eliminated from the body by the urinary system. That is why we say that a number of body systems are playing in the exchange of substance between the external and internal environment and body cells to maintain the homeostasis. The internal environment means extracellular fluid. Then next is we are going to discuss about how this homeostasis is maintained, or when is homeostatic disturbances are occurring. What all lead to homeostatic disturbances, and what systems are triggered when there is a disturbance in the normalcy of our body. So that is feedback systems. In the human body is continually being disturbed. Some disruptions or disturbances come from the external environment. For example, intense heat on a hot summer day, or lack of oxygen for the athletes after a long run. So other interruptions can be from the internal environment or within the body. For example, the low blood sugar when you are skipping a breakfast. When you skip your breakfast, your blood sugar is going far below 70. As I said before, the blood sugar has to be maintained between 70 to 120. So when it is falling below 170, then that is a homeostatic disturbance. Then other than external and internal environment, the third factor which can disturb homeostasis is psychological stresses, which can be in our social environment, that is the demands of work and school. But in most cases, the disruption is mild and temporary, and the responses of the body cells quickly restores the balance in the internal environment. But in some cases, such as poisoning, overexposure to extreme climatic conditions, severe infection, or a major surgery, the homeostasis is severely affected. So the two feedback system which play to regulate the balance are negative feedback system and positive feedback system. We can see in detail how these systems work. Before that, the major two systems which are involved in homeostasis usually are nervous system and endocrine system. Whenever there is a stimulus, whenever there is a homeostatic disturbance, that will be sensed by our receptors, and they will send signal to the nerve, to the brain or spinal cord. So that is how nervous system is getting involved. And the higher centers like brain or spinal cord, they will give the response back to the effectors, so that we will avoid that imbalanced situation. So it can be either endocrine glands, or it can also be muscular system. Okay, so usually the hormones are the one which are restoring the balance. So we can say nervous system and endocrine system are usually involved in homeostasis. Musculoskeletal system are also getting involved in this. Definition of feedback system. A feedback system or a feedback loop is a cycle of events in which a parameter of the internal environment is monitored, evaluated, changed, remonitored, and re-evaluated. The parameter means the controlled variable. The examples of controlled variables are temperature, blood pressure, blood glucose, pH, blood oxygen content. So whenever there is a disruption to this controlled variable or parameter, then homeostasis is affected. And the stimulus is the one which is affecting the controlled variable or parameter. Okay, that is feedback system. Components of a feedback system. The feedback system consists of a receptor. Receptor is the one which is sensing the change in the environment, either in the external or internal environment. It may be sensors, or it may be some chemicals, nerve cells. These are the receptors. They will identify the change. Whenever there is a change from the normalcy, these sensors or nerve cells, they will understand, oh, something has happened. That is called receptors. They monitor the controlled variables. And what these receptors will do, they will give input, or they will send input to the control center by action potentials. that is the electric current. They will produce an electric current which is transmitted from the receptors to the control center. So that is called input. So input is sent via action potentials. So when these action potentials reach control center will give orders to the effectors, that is give output to the effectors, that also through action potentials. These effectors might be muscles or glands, which will produce muscles will it will control center will ask the muscles either to contract or relax or to move away. All those output, the action will be told by control center to the effectors. If it is to the glands may produce hormones or decrease the production of hormones. Either way, it will create a response, and that response will return to homeostasis. That means will return the body back to homeostasis. So this is what is happening in a feedback system. So the components are receptor, it senses and which monitors the control variable, senses the change in the variable, gives input to the control center. Control center will give the output to the effectors. Effectors may be muscles or glands, and the effectors will produce the response. That means the balance is restored or the homeostasis is returned. This is what is happening in feedback system. Now there are two types of feedback system, negative and positive. Negative feedback system means it reverses a change in a controlled variable in the body. Positive means it strengthens or reinforces a change in the controlled variable in the body. A change in the controlled variable or parameter. So if there is a change, if there is a decrease in the parameter, negative feedback will reverse that. That means it will try to increase that parameter. While positive feedback means it will try to reinforce. Suppose there is an increase in the controlled variable. Positive feedback system, what it will do? It will also increase. So that is feedback system in general, the two types. So we can see each one in details. So this is a figure showing the negative feedback system. As I have discussed in the components, we need a stimulus. So stimulus, it can be either external or internal. So that stimulus is actually disrupting the homeostasis of blood pressure. I am taking the example of blood pressure. So this stimulus, it may be either a diarrhea, or it may be a blood clots, bleeding, something. That something has triggered, and there is a drop in blood pressure. So blood pressure is falling down. So the BP, that is the controlled variable. Okay, so the receptors which is monitoring the blood pressure, they are the baroreceptors. Baroreceptors are receptors found in the walls of blood vessels. So they will sense it. So they are the sensors. So receptor will understand that, oh, there is a drop in blood pressure. So they will send the action potentials or input to the control center, that is the brain. What brain will do? Brain will send the action potential or output to the effectors. Example, heart and blood vessels. It may also send the messages to the kidneys, to the gastrointestinal tract. They also receive some orders, but I am concentrating on here the heart and blood vessels. The brain is ordering the effectors. So the heart will increase the heart rate, and the blood vessels will constrict. So the increase of heart rate and vasoconstriction will increase the blood pressure. So the blood pressure is coming back to normal or return to homeostasis occurs. So this is how a negative feedback system works. So in negative feedback system, what is that? Yeah, we can see that whenever there is a change in the control variable, that is the blood pressure was decreased initially, the negative feedback system is reversing that. That is, it is increasing the blood pressure. Next is positive feedback system. I have taken the example of uterine wall contraction at the time of child labor. So at the time of childbirth, there will be increased uterine wall contraction. that will make the head of the baby to come and touch, stretch the walls of the cervix. So there will be increased stretching of the cervix. So stretching of the cervix is the control variable here. So that will be sensed by the receptors, that is a stretch sensitive nerve cells in the cervix. These will send action potential or input to the control center or brain. What will brain do? The brain will release oxytocin, or brain will order the pituitary gland to release oxytocin, and that is the output. This oxytocin will have the effect on the effector, that is the uterine muscles, which increase the contraction of the uterine muscles. So in order to give childbirth, the muscles has to contract. So in order to increase the contraction, the oxytocin is released. Oxytocin will further increase the contraction of the uterine muscles. So the response is increased contraction and more stretching of cervix, and the return of homeostasis occurs only after childbirth. So in this positive feedback system, you can see that initially the stretching of the cervix was increased. It is further increased by the positive feedback system. So usually the positive feedback system, it will stop only when an external manipulation occurs or only when a result has occurred. In our body, the negative feedback system is more prevalent than the positive feedback system. So we can see the differences between positive and negative feedback loop. Negative feedback loop slows down and then stops as the control variable returns to normal. In the example we have seen, when the blood pressure returns to normal, the negative feedback loop will stop. While in a positive feedback loop, it will continuously reinforces the change in control variable unless a mechanism or outside event must shut it off. That is, the childbirth has to occur. Then only the contraction of that muscle will stop, or the positive feedback system will stop. Till then, the oxytocin will get released from pituitary. In negative feedback loop, regulate conditions in the body that remains fairly stable over long periods. It has a much stability. While here it is the positive feedback loop, it is not occurring every time. As I said, it is only occurring in the childbirth time. And if a positive feedback system was occurring every time, it can cause life-threatening conditions. Imagine if it is increasing BP constantly, then it will lead to life-threatening situation. Or if the oxytocin is continuously being produced, even though the child is some problem is occurring with the childbirth, the delivery is not taking place. But the positive feedback loop, it will continuously go on, continuously release oxytocin, so it will lead to life-threatening situation for the patient. But it do not happen very often. That is the main difference between negative feedback and positive feedback. Then next is feed-forward control. Events that occur in anticipation of a change in a control variable is called feed-forward control. For example, you are hungry. You think, see or smell food. Then what will happen? That will create a feedback loop, a feed-forward mechanism, which causes your mouth to salivate and your stomach to secrete gastric juice. This is in preparation by the digestive system to make digestion easier when you eat food. So this is called feed-forward control. Here, the stimulus has not actually happened, but you are just imagining. But the stimulus is the brain is stimulated. Even before the stimulus has occurred, the brain is stimulated and it is ordering the digestive system to get started. So that is called feed-forward control. So these are the three loops which we need to know in homeostasis. That is positive feedback, negative feedback system, and feed-forward control. So these are actually balancing our internal external environment. So that's all about homeostasis. Next is review questions. Please go through these questions. The answers are given in the Next slide. If you like this video, please like, share the video and subscribe to this channel. Please do give your suggestions in the comment box so that I can improve. Thank you.